All right, we are live. We are live. What I can tell. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Frank, how are you?
Good, good. Uh, I always, with this technology, I always look at it and never sure if it's actually live. It just says streaming, so that means live. So we're good.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just catching up right before we pushed the button, just saying how busy for me just the last hour was. My son had a soccer game that was switched over, and it just ended at 7:30, and I was at the soccer field, and coming back here, and then kept my other two guys settled and out of the space, and then there was no Joe. It's like, where's Joe? So a quick text.
Especially these times, I definitely fondly remember 4 kids at between soccer and scouts, drop off one, pick up the other, be late with one, early for the next one, ask a parent to watch a kid while I'm running another kid over somewhere else. And it was a crazy time with during that time. Now my youngest is in college, so those shuffling around days are done.
Now, how many kids do you have?
6 altogether. So my oldest, Alexander, he passed away several years ago. He would be 26 right now. He passed away in 2016. My son Wesley just turns 24 today, so happy birthday to Wesley. Harrison's 22. Annalise is going to be 21 in January. She's 20. She's away in college. Then I have 2 stepdaughters, Isabella, who's 18, and Melissa, who's 14.
Okay.
So 3 boys, 3 girls, 6 altogether, kind of like the Brady Bunch.
So 27, your son would have been 27.
He would have been 26. Yeah, he would have just turned 26.
26. Okay. So that makes you what, like 52?
52, yeah.
2.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's I just turned 60. I'm coming up on 61.
Wow.
And I have 29, 27, 13, 11, and 10.
Right,
all
round 1 and round 2.
all round 1 and round 2. And there is no round 3. There is no round 3.
Right.
All boys. So a lot of masculine energy, or soon to be masculine energy.
Right.
Very immature masculine energy, right? We talked about at the weekend a lot. And for, if men are listening, we did 2 other, I did 2 other lives with Kevin Ogborn and Frank Tritini. And we've got Joe on tonight. And all these 3 things these men have in common. They probably have other things in common, but they just completed a legacy weekend where I was the lead trainer amongst several other men putting on this training. And that, Joe was part of that, but we had met before, right? We had somewhere, right? Right. I don't know.
Could have been another men's event or something, but you were definitely, when I went to put you on my phone, you're already there. So
yeah. So I don't know if we just talked to each other or we met. Maybe I got your number and someone said, "Oh, you should talk to Beauchamp," or because we were both. You're also a speaker and you do leadership development, right, and training. Right. And I was doing the same thing a few years ago with my company, iStar Consultant. So maybe someone
crossed paths somewhere.
Said, "I used to talk to Joe." Maybe we did have a conversation. I don't remember. But yeah, you reminded me of that. So that's interesting.
So how'd you get into doing the Legacy Weekend? Let me just put a little commercial in for the Legacy Weekend. Of course, I don't get anything out of this, just the joy of seeing other men like really take hold of who they are as men. And the Legacy Weekend was a fantastic experience for me. I've already been through doing other men's work with other men, and and really self-development type stuff. And the Legacy Weekend was just another step in that journey, a big step forward. I would definitely recommend it for all men. A lot of really powerful, I don't want to give away elements of the weekend, but a lot of really powerful activities to bring out kind of the stuff that's on the inside of us and see, who we are as sometimes as little boys. I think we're men, and really we're just a bunch of immature kids running around, with our emotions going crazy and stuff like that. And so to bring that to light a little bit, and also just to take inventory of our lives and our legacy, hence the Legacy Weekend. It's really a great experience. I would highly recommend it to all men. Show up there. It's a tremendous experience. You won't regret it.
Yeah.
And it's not even that expensive. You can't even get that, it's a tenth of the price that you pay to go to another type of event where you wouldn't even get half the value out of it.
Right. Yeah, that's the great thing about that event being put on by the organization, that the organization doesn't look to make money, right? We look to break even. Right. And so the value is far, far, far exceeds the tuition, which is, somewhere around, usually get it for about $500, give or take 50 or 100. I'm not on that side of it anymore. But yeah, it's a great event. I got into, it's a long story. If I tell it, I'm a storyteller, Joe. So you're asking the question, like, how did I get involved in Legacy Week?
Give us the laser focused version.
I go back to I take it back, and it's a really good serendipitous story. And I got to go back to before I even knew of men's work, so to speak, like men's teams and things of that nature. This is going back 17 years now. I had already done training with Dr. Carolyn Mace on the archetypes. She had CMED Institute, where I went out there 3 weekends a year for 4 years. 2 years were as a teaching assistant. So I had 5 years of experience with the archetypes, learning, her system, getting certified by her in archetypal consulting. Mm-hmm. And really the book was Sacred Contracts, Finding Your Divine Purpose. Right. So it was using the archetypes as a roadmap to when you were in sync with that energy of the archetypes, then you knew you were on purpose. Right? And then when you were out of sync, how do you know? It's like, I could feel out of sync, but if we can narrow it down, use the archetypes with the language of the archetypes and the energy of the archetypes to guide us, I found that very, very, very powerful. And I found it to be true. And it's one of those things, and you study these things of the mind and the spirit, and when you read something or you hear something and you go, yeah, that's what it is. And right. And for me, it's those moments where I didn't learn something. I learned the language. Once I hear the language, I realized, whoa, I know that. Now I just have language for it. And it really excites me when I get that, because it's just this like lightning rod, this grounding truth, right? And that's how I felt with the archetypes. So I had gone through that process, and I was with the mother of my children when we were just dating, and we met another couple, and we were hanging out with that couple, and the guy says to me, "So what do you do for fun?" He starts talking about men's teams, and then he says, "Yeah, I just did this weekend, and in this weekend it's called Legacy Discovery, and we did a lot of work with father. We also learned about the archetypes." And he said the archetypes. And I was like, "Oh, archetypes!" And he started telling me, and as a man who just did this weekend, and the archetypes weren't nearly as developed in his weekend as the one that you just did. So he starts trying to tell me a little bit the archetypes. I'm just like, okay, yeah, okay, and here I am. I've studied 4 years with, one of the leading authorities on it. So I took that in, and fast forward, that was like in June. I did the Legacy Weekend that October through a series of events.
Right.
Series of serendipitous events, very serendipitous events. And when at that time, there was 2 requirements to be on the training team, having done the Legacy Weekend and being a man on the men's team. And that was it. So they asked who wanted to be on the training team, and my hand went up. And during that weekend, as you remember, we went back to the sacred circle and declared what archetype were you most embodied that weekend. The one that I stepped into that weekend was the king. And that was surprising for me at the time. And then I also saw the power of this weekend that was much different than, similar, but very different than the one that you just experienced. And I saw there was a lot of power there. The whole male initiation, the whole arc of the hero's journey, and that arc and the archetypes, but they were laying it out more towards the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. As a matter of fact, exactly from the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, which is a very good book. But in my opinion, the archetypal model. Are you familiar with the book? Have you read it?
I have not read that book, no.
Yeah, the 2 men, Moore and Gillette, are Jungian psychiatrists. So it was very well written. The second half of the book around the description of the archetypes was fantastic. The psychological model is very well explained, but hard to navigate. They had it was a pyramid. I mean, the symbol itself is clunky. Right, a pyramid. You can't roll a pyramid. You can roll a dice, but you can't roll a pyramid.
Right.
And it was hard just to integrate. And the only way, the one exception I've had to that book for years is in the book, they said the way from, they called the shadow, the immature, to the mature, was to give up the way of the boy. In other words, give up the shadow. And that part was always, completely opposite from my training. That you didn't give up the shadow. You had to walk through the words of Debbie Ford. You walk through the shadow to get to the light. So I have to own my shadow, claim my shadow, be friends with it, be homogenized. Hence the name of my group here, the Integrated Man, kind of come together with the shadow. And then you get a chance of being your best. So that work has always called to me, the archetypal work. So when I got involved with the weekend, I was very instrumental in kind of changing the language into the language that you experience in the weekend around the archetypes. So that's been a privilege of mine, and almost like a calling, if you will.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm going to say that one of the greatest things that I got out of the Legacy Weekend was understanding, I guess, accepting my shadow, as opposed to spending time, energy, and effort in denying the shadow or fighting the shadow. So I think we get into our ego a lot when we're trying to either defending our shadow side or trying to pretend or trying to convince others that it didn't really happen. It doesn't really exist, kind of thing. Like that's not really part of who we are.
So let's do a little men's work here. How did that show up for you?
So I would say that, if I rewind before doing any men's work, I would blame. I think I remember one time seeing in Disney, somebody had a shirt and the shirt said, I'm grumpy because you're dopey. Right. So I kind of thought that was like how I was, like I'm angry because you're a jerk. Like I'm angry because everyone else in the world is doing dumb stuff. And look at how foolish or ignorant or whatever everyone else is acting. And those things would kind of frustrate me. I was a big blamer where it was other people's fault. My marriage was, the problems I had in my marriage was my spouse's fault. And the problems I had at work was, the boss's fault or the economy's fault or the other leaders around the business. It was their fault. And problems that I had with friends were their fault. And whatever I had was somebody else's fault. And it was basically like, I call it a prison, right? So like every bar of the prison are these different elements in our life. And because they're everybody else's fault, it's like a prison, like the grading on a prison, right? But once I can understand that every one of those things is really me, it's all my fault. And I can take responsibility, then I can remove those bars. I'm no longer in prison by circumstances. I now can, be in charge and run my own life. So that's been a series of, I guess, discoveries and acceptances over the course of the last, 6 years of doing men's work, being around other men who challenge me, hold up the mirror to my face and show me, what I look like on the outside and help me to discover things about myself and mature and accept things about myself and make changes. So that's been, like I said, from December of 2017 until now, I've been in a growing phase, a lot of really major growth steps in my life. And so the Legacy Weekend was definitely another step in that journey.
Gotcha. So when you said a big blamer, and then you started talking about your ways of being, what I heard in archetypal language, and not what we talked about on the weekend, because on the weekend it just was boiled down very specifically for men to the king, the warrior, magician, and lover, based on the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, 4 archetypes of mature masculine. But what I heard in the model that I learned with Carolyn, the 4 archetypes that we all share as human beings in her model was the prostitute, the saboteur, the child, and the victim. And I heard a lot of victim energy in there.
Yeah.
Yep, everyone else's fault. Everyone else's fault. Look what they did. Look what they did to me, type of thing. And that's a tough place to. It's tough to live that way. But it's easy to live that way too, right? Because especially these days, everyone's at fault. You can blame anyone for anything these days, right, and get away with it. And there is this lack of accountability in society, or this hyper accountability in society. Do you agree with that?
I don't know about the hyper accountability. You have to explain that one, but definitely a lack of accountability. I'm going to say that I don't know, from this side now, life is so much easier. Like I'm much more at peace. I much more enjoy peace and fulfillment and happiness and joy in my life, acknowledging and accepting those parts of my life, taking accountability, owning my life and the parts of my life, rather than trying to blame others for it. I think I just didn't know any better at the time. I don't want to say I took the easier route, because it might seem easier at the first step, but it's definitely not an easier route. It ends up in divorce and bankruptcy and, financial problems and family problems and a whole lot of, a ton of problems by engaging in my ego and blaming others, who then engage their egos and blame me or blame others. And it's just life is just so much easier to just take responsibility and just say, like an argument pretty much ends if somebody says, Joe, you're such a jerk. Like, I'm like, yep, you're right. It's so much easier. Like the argument's done. Like I'm not hurt, upset, angry, frustrated, or annoyed or whatever. The other person's like, okay, yeah, he's getting it. He accepts it. life's easier. It's not as hard as it was when I would battle back against that. I'm a jerk. You're a jerk, you know?
Right. Yeah, I get a little triggered in a way I want to explain when I heard you say the ego. Let my ego get engaged, right? I want to make, and I have a perspective that our egos get a bad rap. Now, I think, especially with men, I think ego gets a bad rap. Like everything a man does, that's, well, I don't even want to say this in this. I don't even want to enter these two words together, but that toxic masculinity is going to be blamed. Is that a way of saying ego? Like too much ego, like that type of behavior when you say it? Because I look at, listen, I'm a good looking guy. You're a good looking guy. I had an ego. Like I feel good about myself. Is that ego? Is that what's your take on that? Well, that ego sometimes is a bad thing, but I think his ego is a good thing. So
yeah, it depends. Look, you can call ego self-confidence, self-awareness in the good sense. I generally refer to ego, I'll draw the line between confidence and I can just draw the line between confidence and arrogance. However you want to, maybe ego spans both of those. Usually when I'm referring to ego, I'm referring to the negative part about ourselves. That's arrogant. That's, I self-value more than I ought to. Right. So I think true humility is knowing exactly who we are, good and bad. I can't say, well, I'm terrible at this, or, meanwhile, I fall in the 99th percentile, right? Oh no, I'm not really that good at that. No, that's false humility. You're just, that's still self-serving arrogance, let's say, as opposed to being like, no, I do happen to fall in the 99th percentile of it, but I'm just equally as valuable as anybody else, So we can take ego out of it and just call it arrogance or pride. Pride is another word. Pride could be another word. Like I have good pride, and then there's negative pride. When I think I'm better than you, that's negative pride.
Oddborn just put in the chat, ego versus egotistical.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being
egotistical. Thanks for watching, Oddborn.
Yeah. Right.
Love you, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, I could buy that, right? I mean, being that, it's just, I don't want to, as a man, I want to own my ego and feel good about it, right? That self-love and all that kind of stuff, which is so hard for us men, right? To really, I'll speak in general. I'll speak personally too. For me, and through my observation and coaching men and working with men, it's hard a lot of times for us men to love ourselves. And I know for me, I was brought up with a father who had a very discerning eye, and his methodology was to point out what was wrong. Right. So even when things were right, I didn't hear what was right. I heard what was wrong.
Right.
And what I've learned through that process is, how to pick out what's wrong also, but because of my emotional discomfort, I guess, I don't want to say scars, but from being raised like that, not getting the praise and just getting the
criticism,
or the judgment, because sometimes it wasn't even criticism, right? It wasn't even long enough to be criticism. It was just judgment.
Right. Right.
Like it's not a criticism when someone calls you, idiot.
Right.
It's not a criticism. It's just a flat out judgment.
Right. It's just
I would have liked some criticism sometime.
Right.
Well, we just got the job. But yeah, so now what I do with my boys is I really try to make sure, and when I coach the basketball, I see what's wrong. And that's good. It's good to be the coach to see what's wrong. So you can guide and, but you have to give them the good too.
Right.
That's what I learned. Like I didn't get the good. I'm not blaming my father. He did the best he could, and he was a good dad. That's just his methodology. I would have liked more pat on the back every now and again.
Right. Look, we carry these things into adulthood because, like, you'll hear the expression people say, like, I need to give that person a piece of my mind. Well, who's the beneficiary of that? If I need to talk to you for my benefit, we can call that negative ego, right? Because my conversation with you is all me serving. The other way to look at it would be like, hey, you know what? Frank's dealing with some issues, and maybe if I involve myself in his life in a way, he can grow and overcome these issues that he's having. And if I engage with you in a way that's going to help you to make progress forward, that's now you serving. That would be, I would call that, love or care for the other person, as opposed to selfishness or pride or what might be considered ego or the negative part of ego. And a lot of times people will engage with others for themselves. So somebody's told me the other day, and this is hear me out for a second. He calls on the phone. He's going to get he needs to get some kind of procedure done, some kind of medical testing. He's got some kind of medical ailment. He's, I think, like 65 years old, dealing with some kind of condition with, body systems, whatever it was. So he called the specialist, and the specialist is like, we can see you, like, I don't know, 2 weeks from now or next month or some long distance away. And he says, I really need this thing. I'm concerned about this part about my health. I need a sooner appointment. And the lady says, I don't care. And then he's like, oh, you don't care. And so he's like, all right, goodbye. And he hangs up the phone. He's all offended, right? So then he calls another provider, gets whatever he needs to take care of. So he relays this to me. What a terrible condition the world is in, that this person who he's calling for help, working in some kind of medical facility, would tell him, I don't care. So I flipped it around on him. I said, okay, I understand that. That's got to be really frustrating to hear that. Like, my gosh, especially when you're in need, you just got these medical results, you need a specialist, and you can't see them for like a month, and the person says they don't care. That's got to really feel terrible. But now let's flip that around the other way. What do you think's going on in this girl's mind that made her feel so distraught that that would flow out of her, that she would be like, oh, I don't care? Is it possible to look at it from her side? Yeah, she was offensive to you, but what could have been going on? How much stress would she be under? How many phone calls or how many people, piling on top of her? What's going on in her life that would put her in such a terrible position to tell a person who's going through some kind of medical issue, I don't care, right? And he's like, oh, I never thought about it from her perspective, And if you think about it from the other person's perspective, he might have been able to say to her, something encouraging and engaging with her that might have taken her to a higher level, right? He might have been able to connect with her and say, listen, I realize you're having a really rough day. You must be under a lot of pressure. Maybe a lot of other people being rude to you today. And, and he might have been able to empathize with her and maybe helped her to step out of the hole that she's in. We don't know. She might have hung up the phone and cried and walked off the job, or who knows what happens. We don't know if her, we don't know what's going on in this person's life. So, but we're so self-focused that we never focus on, hey, what's going on with the other person? Oh, you told me you don't care about me. Oh, you don't care about me. As opposed to being like, oh my gosh, that you don't care about me. That's so terrible. Like what's going on with you that's so bad that that would come out of your mouth. But we rarely ever think about things like that. We're just all into fighting with each other.
Yeah, that's like an exception. I believe that's an exceptional way of thinking. Under those conditions, right? To go through the scenario that you just posed, to have that thought if I was calling, looking for that appointment, because I'm in stress. I'm in a physical, and that thing that they say is like, when you don't have your health, you have nothing. It's true. I told the story that I had the heart attack last year, out of nowhere. Thank God, a very rare situation. I had no physical damage to my heart, even though 20 minutes later, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I got very lucky, but that is a different perspective after that. As I'm sure yourself with your son, just a whole different perspective on life, after an event like that. So to be able to, in that moment, to have that thought of what another, that's next level, I think, for most people. That's next level for most people. How would you propose someone get there?
Get there? Yeah. So I think the thing is, so our brains are wired in such a way that when we are in danger, when we feel under attack, our limbic brain engages. And when our limbic brain engages, all it thinks about is self-preservation. So our world shrinks down and it really just focuses on us surviving right now. So, while you're undergoing a heart attack, you really weren't interested in the lives of the people that came to bring you to the hospital or the other workers. Your focus right now is, I just need to survive. And our brains are wired that way, right? Because in a life and death, in a literal life and death situation, if I survive, I get to pass on my DNA, right? And so our brains are wired, just survive this dangerous, threatening, life-threatening situation. The problem is that in large part, our brains don't recognize that day-to-day life is not really life-threatening. So when that girl said, "I don't care," it really didn't affect the person's life at all. It wasn't. It felt like a threat. It felt like an attack, but it really wasn't. Right. So when your boss says something to you, when our wives say stuff to us, when a customer decides to stop working with us or stop buying our services or products or whatever it is, when our parents say stuff to us, when our kids say stuff to us, they're really not attacks. They just feel like attacks. And when they feel like an attack, the brain triggers into this self-preservation mode and it shuts off the rest of the world and it just shrinks down to us, and we're like in survival mode. And it's not super severe. Like, we're not going out, taking weapons against others, although some people do that. But it's enough to make our responses like sometimes counterattack or countermeasures. So being good at recognizing when we're getting emotionally engaged and when our world is shrinking, and focusing on expanding that world and doing our purpose. I think a lot of this comes down to a real grasp of our purpose in life. My purpose in life is not self-serving so that I can amass, wealth and power and I don't know, whatever else, wealth and power, but it's to use whatever I've gotten in life to give it to others and help to others. And when I can align with my purpose and I stay focused on my purpose, it does serve others and it can help me to stay focused on other people. And if I can be careful of when my emotion level is getting triggered and recognize, okay, I'm starting to get emotionally triggered, let me take steps to calm my emotion level down, my world then expands again to include others. I don't know if that was too convoluted or if that made any sense.
No. What I hear inside of that, and again, you're saying it, and I completely understand what you're saying. I translate that into fear. I talked a little bit about fear at the weekend, and so with my background, not a background, it's a personal trainer and doing a lot of energy medicine, energy work, Reiki, craniosacral therapy, so body energy, very versed in that. And everything you said around the survival, I see as coming from a fear, right? Everything you said, like this fear that's out there, right? When that gazelle is on the plains and thinks there's a predator, right? It perks up.
Right.
But there might be, and what happens physiologically there? There's physiological things that happen in the body.
Right.
It's not just that limbic brain.
Right.
Not just that limbic brain. There's physical things that happen in the body.
Right.
That happens with anxiety, right? That's anxiety, that feeling of anxiety, the heart pumping, the sweats, the ready to go.
Right.
Wait a second. There's nothing to be afraid of here, but you feel anxious. Why do I feel anxious? Because you got these hormones rushing, because there's a fear going on. So we were perfectly aligned there. But where I think that I like to take people is in doing daily maintenance so that you know what baseline is. Because the problem with what you said is that's the baseline. That baseline is that fear base. That baseline is that elevated cortisol, ready for the adrenaline shot.
Right.
Ready for looking for the adrenaline, not ready, but looking for it, right? That cortisol needs the adrenaline to boom.
Right.
You know, and you get that. And hey, anyone that's ever felt that adrenaline loves it, dude. I mean, right? You just do something exciting.
There's definitely a high with that.
Everyone. That's why roller coasters exist.
Yeah.
I get that. No, it's
that's the truth. Yeah.
Intoxicating.
It creates that fear. Yeah.
So these are the people also that are on that level and create their own drama.
Right.
At that level, like to get that hit. You know, and you know, I know people, that do that to themselves. So I like to take people into that meditation state. And how do we reset that baseline? So now this is normal.
Right.
So now I can recognize when it gets here and then bring it down before it goes here.
Right.
But if you're always at that baseline, right, and then you get that other stimulus that comes in, how do you stop it from going there? Right. Just by thinking about it? Like,
all right. So when my son passed away, I like to think of it like, you know, so everybody has like their level that they break at, right? And so most of us exist at some level below that breaking point. And then as the stress and things in life happen, we get up to that breaking point and then we break, right? And when we break, we snap. Let me just talk for myself. Like I would break and I would snap, right? I would curse, I would yell, I would literally break things. So prior to my son passing away, I'd been through, you know, divorce court, family court, all this other stuff through the divorce and post-divorce lawsuits and et cetera. And it raised that underlying background baseline stress level that I would just wake up in the morning being at a level of stress. Now, I'll say that throughout most of my life, even prior to this, I lived at a certain level of stress, thinking that was normal. That was my calm, peaceful state. Now I know that I can get much more calm and peaceful than that, but that was where I lived at. And so then with the divorce and all these, you know, if you've been through court and stuff like that, it's just such a, you know, stressful situation.
Sure.
So my son passes away and now my baseline is here. And I basically lived right below that breaking point day to day. And any little thing would just put me right over the edge. You know, I was emotionally unstable for a period of time.
Gotcha.
And I would break a lot. I would break and I would just lose it. I could break down and cry, or I could break out in anger and frustration and yelling and cursing and stuff like that. And so I learned over time to really own, first of all, that I'm allowing myself to be there and I'm allowing myself to break, and also own where I am stress level, that these circumstances in life don't have to push me to the edge, and to bring more and more space between my breaking point and my level of existence, and to do the daily, like you said, daily maintenance to keep that baseline down at a very calm, peaceful, emotional state, so that I don't break. So when stress comes in, I'm not, you know, passing that breaking point. So I think a lot of it is recognition, it's acceptance, and it's doing regular maintenance that helps me to stay at a calm, peaceful, emotional state. I've never gotten too much into meditation. I do pray, which they do say has a similar kind of effect on the body. But I've done tremendous amounts of studying and training and stuff like that. And people recommend meditation as a way to get that emotional state down and down to a real calm, peaceful, emotional state. So I don't know if you do meditation, if you want to share some of the benefits or how to start it, if somebody does want to start getting into meditation.
And I mean, where I started off in this whole work was at the energy level, right? Reiki, martial arts was the first thing, getting to the energy and the chi in the martial arts. Then that gravitating to the healing side of it in the Reiki, and obviously that's going into more of the metaphysical and the spiritual teachings, and meditation definitely being one of them. Got very, very involved in a lot of different meditations, chanting, staring at a mandala, It's a lot of different ways to do meditation. Walking meditation is probably my favorite, and that's why I like hiking in the woods. It could be a meditation, right? Or a period of it, right? You don't have to do the whole thing. If you're going to go for a 4-hour hike, you'd say, okay, for the next 20 minutes, I want to be mindful of everything that I can possibly be aware of.
Right.
Like everything. Right? And where do you start? I would start with each foot, the feeling of my foot on the floor, the crunch of the leaves. I'm just walking through and just expand that to everything in my body and how my body felt, my heart, just everything. And just expand that out and out. And I just do that for 20 minutes, a half hour, maybe. That could be a walking meditation. The stuff that happens up here when that happens is amazing.
Right.
And that connectedness. When I do something like that, my connectedness to everything,
right,
is tremendous. And for me, it doesn't make me feel small. It makes me feel infinite, and not in an egotistical way, like in a way like, wow, okay, I can overcome whatever challenge I am facing because I am bigger than whatever challenge I'm facing.
Right.
I just have to work through it. So that's some strength I derive from it in that way. And some people say, wow, when they get connected to everything, they realize how small they are. So that problems are minuscule in this great big universe. So whatever works, right? Whatever perspective works for me. I don't like the thought that I'm small. I take the perspective that I'm bigger than this.
Right.
But the meditation that I really recommend is just, and I dubbed it a ninja meditation because I want it to be used in practicality. Martial artist, I'm a man. If you have a tool and you can't use it, what good is the tool, right?
Right.
So very practical. So the ninja meditation, I just tell people 5 minutes a day. All right. And I like to do it in the morning. You set your timer on your clock. Everyone has a watch. Everyone has the phone timer. 5 minutes. But at 5 minutes, anywhere. You can do it anywhere. Breathe into the nose, out to the mouth, into the nose, out to the mouth. And whatever thought comes into your head, you want to let it go. However you can do that. Put it in a bubble. Cover it with smoke. Wash it away. Whatever the visual is. However you manage that. I like to say, look, put it in one of those thought bubbles and pop it. So I see the thought, I feel it, and it pops. Right? It's just, it might not be words. It might be a vision. That might be the thought, might be a vision, might be a word, might hear, whatever it is. Just for 5 minutes, I'm trying to let that go. Could be sitting there for 30 seconds. What am I going to have for lunch today? Let it go. And then I could be sitting there saying, wow, it's been 3 minutes. I'm doing really good at this.
Let it go.
Yeah, right. And what it is just a skill, building the skill of letting thoughts go. Right? Because that's what causes that stress response. It's a thought.
Right.
Yeah. Did you hear what they said on the news? No. So because you heard something, because vibrations came through and went in my ear, affected my nerve, my audio nerve. It caused a thought that is now causing my cortisol level and my adrenaline to go up.
Right.
Like, what's
this is
behind that? There's a fear there, right? So if I could take that thought and say, don't want that one.
Right.
Let it go. That's a great skill to have.
Absolutely. That's really like when I learned that I could do that, I was very curious, a little bit doubtful, but curious. I'm like, it made sense. When I did it the first time, I was like, I chuckled. I literally chuckled. I was surprised. I'm like, oh my gosh, it worked. To be able to let it go. So what happens, let's say physiologically, is you have this like emergency center of your brain, and the memory center of your brain is like butted up against that, right? So you think so you hear something on the news, right? And then that it cycles across this memory center and it triggers this emotion. And if you can let it go, the cortisol that gets released, the stress hormone that gets released from that disappears. It actually, your body will send out enzymes and just digest it. It just gets rid of it, right? So your stress level goes down. The reason why stress levels don't go down is because we can't let go of the thought. We just keep thinking about it again and again, right? So somebody cuts you off on the expressway. If you can let it go, boop, it went by once, and you're like, oh, pop the thought bubble, it's gone, or however you want to process it. You let it go. But what we do is we go, I can't believe you cut me off. That's such a crazy driver. That was so stupid. Who is he to cut me off? Somebody else cut me off the other day. And the stress levels go up and up and up.
But remember what you said, they're already here. They're already at that breaking point, right?
Because they have a lifestyle of regurgitating their thoughts.
Right. So it's like, if you're always there, like you described, that little thing, like getting cut off or whatever, someone give you whatever, can easily put you over the edge.
Right.
Right. How nice is it? And I'm sure you're like this too. Someone cuts me off. I'm like, whoa, that was close. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
I drive 3,000 miles a month. I do a lot of driving, and I very, very rarely get any kind of upset at anyone when I'm driving now, because it doesn't serve me. Like, going back to how does that serve me? Get me all amped up. So a lot of times I'll say, peace be with you. Yeah, God bless. Wow, they must be really having a bad day. I guess they're in a hurry to get someplace. I'm on time. I'm good. Yeah. So managing those emotions are. Listen, I said it during the weekend. We talk about the weekend. We talk about the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. Right? The lover is definitely the place of the emotions. In energy work, it's the heart chakra, which is the bridge chakra, when everything goes from physical to the energetic. The other realm, it's got to cross the heart chakra. All right. If your heart is closed, there's not going to be a blend. There's going to be a disconnect in your life. Right. And it's the same thing. If we're closed off emotionally, it's hard for anything to go right.
Right. And I think it goes back to the triggered emotional state where our world shrinks in. Right. So I think having our hearts open, we're outward. We can see the rest of the world. We can have empathy with the girl who tells us she doesn't care, or with the person who cuts us off on the road, or, we see things from the other person's perspective. We can value the other person enough to see things from their side. Oh, that guy must be in a real hurry. I hope he's okay. I hope everything's going okay in his life. So, having that ability is, I guess it's a self-feeding kind of cycle as well, right? Because if I can keep myself from being emotionally triggered, I don't have to let my world shrink down. If I can recognize that my world is shrunk down, it really just is about me, then I can say, okay, well, something's wrong emotionally. I'm feeling emotionally triggered, and I can allow myself to calm my emotional state so I can expand out to other people.
I'm going to make a little micro distinction. I don't want to personally, just maybe it's my language, but I don't mind being emotionally triggered. Like, I know I'm going to be emotionally triggered. However, I don't have to respond to that triggeredness, that stimulus that pulls the trigger. Maybe it's a difference. When I hear triggered, it's just from an emotional perspective, like going, ugh, that feeling, right? Ugh. Not saying that, but feeling that.
Right.
That to me that's what I call triggered. I don't have to act out on that.
Well, if you're going to choose to stay triggered, right? So if let's say you're walking, I don't know, whatever, you're in the store and somebody says something insulting to you, whatever. The initial.
Let's get real. We got Thanksgiving coming up. Let's get real.
Okay, so you're at the Thanksgiving dinner table.
If you're getting triggered by what a stranger said, well, yes, we're talking baseline stuff, and no, that really shouldn't matter. All right, but let's talk about the people that put the buttons there in the first place, our families, right? They know where all of the buttons are because they put them there.
Right.
And they know exactly how to push them. All right. And we love them for it, or despite of it.
In spite of it, yeah.
Sometimes.
But sometimes it's their job, right? If our family's not pushing our buttons, we don't know that they're there.
Right, exactly. So it's not that I don't want, because if there is, because I can speak to this, or being, cutting it off. So if I'm not triggered, I feel like I'm devoid of that emotion. Like, you can't touch me. Say whatever you want, dude. You can't get to. He said, well, I'm not going to get triggered. So that's for me, that's not healthy, because that's that wall. Boom. You can't get me. But that's,
I want to say,
I want the trigger, but I also want, and I pride myself on keeping the choice of how to respond to that stimulus. But I still want that emotional trigger, because then I get to find out, wow, why did that sting so much? And I get to grow from that.
I'm going to say there's another part to it. There's another way, like there's a person who says, okay, I know that somebody's going to shoot at me, so I'm going to put up a wall, right? Because you're not going to get to me. Here's the wall that's going to separate us, and your bullets aren't going to get to me. Mm-hmm. There's another way of being that just says, you can shoot at me because the bullet's just going to pass right through me. It's okay, right? I can take it. They're just going to in and out because I can process them, right? So, and that's kind of where I want to be. I'm not putting up walls. I don't avoid people who, that person is a triggering person. I'm going to avoid, they're a toxic person. I love toxic people. I'm okay with that. I'm a toxic person. Let's put some love on some toxic people.
You say you never get triggered?
I'm not saying I never get triggered. That's my wife. She just walked in. But they're my triggers, right? I own them. And the thing is, so let's go back to the brain, right? So if somebody says something to me and it triggers me, I can either keep thinking of that thought and it continually triggers me, or the thought comes through, I get triggered, I let it go, like that thought bubble, I just let it pop and I let it go and I move on to something else. And I allow the emotion level, the cortisol, to go down, right? It takes about 90 seconds for the cortisol to go down from the initial trigger. If a negative emotion is lasting more than 90 seconds, it's because we're continuously thinking about it. Like we're recycling that thought in our head. I can't believe he said that. I can't believe she did that. I can't believe she did it to me. Why did she do that again? Or why did he do that again? Or why did he say that? I don't deserve to be treated that way. And we just keep going through these thoughts in our head. The sooner we can let go of them, the sooner that cortisol level can go down. So if that cortisol level is not going down, we know that we're triggered. And that's the great thing about meditation is when you can be aware, when you can be mindful of my feet touching the ground, the air, the feeling of the temperature, the wind, the animals, the grass, whatever it is, you're not thinking about, why did he say that? Why did she do that? Why did this happen? Why does this happen to me? This always happens to me. My cousins did this. My brother did that. My dad did this. My childhood was like that. Whatever was like this. Please don't do that. Sorry, I'm always about to put stuff in the microwave. And it's about to make a bunch of noise in the background. Thank you. The more we can regurgitate those thoughts, the more and more angry we get, as though the attack happened multiple times. The attack can happen once, right? Somebody comes and pushes a button, and then we push it all the rest of the time. We just keep pushing our own button because we keep rethinking that thought. So it's not a problem that somebody comes by and says something or does something, it pushes a button. But how many times are we going to push our own button with that thought? That's really up to us. And that's a skill that we can master. And if we can get good at meditation or mindfulness or anything that gets our mind to not continuously regurgitate that thought, that's really the key to allowing that stress level to go down and to not live in this state of almost at the breaking point where any little thing can set us off.
Absolutely.
And as we get aware, like, so if somebody, one of our kids or our spouse or a family member, a brother, sister, parent, they say something, and we start to feel that emotion level pop up inside of us, recognize that, I call them secondary emotions. When I'm angry, then I'm angry, or I'm frustrated, then I'm hurt, or I'm annoyed, then I'm irritated, or whatever. I have a secondary emotion on it. But just to, like, it pops and be like, oh, that's interesting. Hey, how are you doing, anger? I see you there. If my dad said something that made me angry, what's going on inside of me? Right. And so then, instead of blaming it on him, oh, my dad's such a jerk because he always says this stuff, I can have some empathy on him, and I can start to wonder about me. Well, what is it saying about me that I'm allowing this thing to emotionally trigger me? And then I can decide, if I put some space in there without reacting or regurgitating the thinking, what do I need to do to let this emotion calm down? When I can start thinking about other things, or just allow it to pass, recognize it, acknowledge it, and just sort of allow the emotion. Comes in one door, goes out the back door. See you later. Right. And then just allow that emotion level to calm down.
There's a great, and you might know the quote exactly. I'll probably mess it up a little bit. The Viktor Frankl quote.
There's a space somewhere. There's a space between the stimulus and response.
Between stimulus and response, and to widen that gap.
Right.
To do stuff, and that's for me what I use the archetypes and ways of being. That's a tool that I use in that space. Once that stimulus comes in, and I have an awareness of what archetype I'm in, or that emotion, or that awareness, just it all tied in. It might not be just an emotion, it might be something else. I can feel that shift and go, oh, I know where this is going. Like, I've seen the end of this movie. I've seen this scene before. It's a good scene. That's a bloody scene. That's a good scene. And I get, I said, but that's not going to serve me today. Can I do something different?
Right.
Do something different. Do it right in that moment. So that's like another tool, or just to be aware, like you said, of that emotion rising, and then not have. It's like, how great is it? Right. It sounds like you've got very good. I don't want to. Maybe you've mastered this in your life. I know I feel pretty good about it in my life. Getting to that point where it's kind of freeing, right? For me, I feel freeing. Right? You kind of come at me with anything, and you might push a button, but you're not going to get me. I'm not going to compromise myself.
Right.
I'm not going to compromise. You're going to push a button. I might not like it. I'm going to feel that sting. You slap me across the face, it's going to sting, but I don't have to punch you in the face. I don't have to punch you. Don't have to do that.
Right.
But if I don't feel it, then if I don't feel the slap of the sting of the slap, I get no credit for withholding my reaction. You know what I'm saying? Like, so what's a better? So I want to feel the sting of the slap. Personally, because again, I need to be in touch with that pain, with that emotion, and to be able to move past it, right, and not respond to that. And the other, Viktor Frankl, is the one of man's last freedoms is to choose his own attitude. So I'm a big proponent of that.
Right.
And when I do snap, to use your vernacular, it's my choice. And I'll take responsibility.
Right. Which is huge. I would say that's a great takeaway from the weekend, is really owning that responsibility. I did it because I chose to do it. I flipped out because I chose to do it. Right. Yeah. I may have felt in control at the time, but it was still under my control. Right. I still did it. I didn't flip out because you were being a jerk. I flipped out because that was the action that I chose at the time, and the damage that I caused because of that is my responsibility. And really owning that is I think it's a huge step in masculinity and adulthood and maturity.
Have you been in a situation since the weekend that you did that, like you chose the shadow and own the fallout? Has that happened at all?
Well, they're all my choices. But I can't say that I've logically chosen to go down the route of the shadow. I've definitely done that in the past where I've had a decision making. And I've actually thought, do I handle this in the, calm, peaceful way, or do I handle it in the more of, an angry, emotional way? And I've purposefully made the decision to respond with an angry response. And thankfully it worked out well. There was no collateral damage. People didn't get, people didn't really get injured, but at least people knew that this is a serious issue that I was serious about.
Right.
And so there are times when that, being able to access that part and use it can work in the moment.
Yes.
I will say that in just recently, times when I've acted out in anger wasn't a logical choice they're always my choice. They're my fault, right? I take responsibility. But I didn't contemplate the two directions to go and then decide to go the angry route. I just allowed myself to do the angry route.
Right. Well, that's what you just said is in a big juxtaposition that you said earlier in the conversation, where you had a lot of you were a blamer.
I was a blamer, yeah.
And how great is it on the other side of it to say, no, what's happening to me is my responsibility.
It's my responsibility. I did it. I allowed the thinking. I allowed the beliefs. I allowed the actions. I allowed the response. Came out of my mouth from my brain.
What's so great about that, I think, that the shift between that blaming and the owning is that when I was a blamer, that even when good stuff happened, I got lucky. Right? Which is like it's like the positive spin of blaming. Well, it wasn't because of me. I got lucky. And now I take responsibility for the bad stuff. Well, I guess I get to own all the good stuff too.
Yeah.
Good stuff has to be. Well, it was because of my mindset. It was because I did my daily work. It was because I can own that. It doesn't. Oh well, yeah, I don't know how that happened. No, I did that. That's right. That's the stuff that I did, and that's going back to that ego, that healthy ego. Yes, I did that. I put the work in. I learned the lessons.
Right.
I learned.
A lot of bumps and bruises, but I learned them. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Listen, what did I say? It's right. There's wisdom and experience, and you get the wisdom from going through the experience of failing.
Right. Failure is a great teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. Failure is a great teacher, but to get to be wise and make wise decisions is because we failed and had that experience.
Right? We learn from it.
So, it's just to read a book and learn what not to do. You read the book and you still screw up, and then you say, that's what they were talking about in the book.
As I like to say it, I can teach somebody to duck, but until you get punched in the face, the lesson really isn't that meaningful.
Right. So, all right, my friend, it's been just a little over an hour.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's a great conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is awesome.
And hopefully we'll talk again soon. There's Kevin Ogborn. The wisdom is in the wound. I just texted that to him the other day.
Good stuff.
He's a great man. So, all right, brother.
All right. Have a great night. Enjoy your Thanksgiving. Everyone who's listening or watching or checks us out later on, enjoy your Thanksgiving and the holiday season. Reach out to either one of us. And if anybody needs anything, we're here.
Absolutely.
All right, brother. Great talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man.
Love
you, brother. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.